From the bleakness of Edwardian Bristol to sunlit California in the golden age of Hollywood, from poverty to extravagant wealth, from obscurity to film star fame, Archibald Alexander Leach lived the life of a fairy tale. He became one of the wealthiest and most famous Hollywood film stars of the mid-20th century, the shining star in a constellation of films from the 1930s to the 1960s. Alfred Hitchcock described him as the only actor I ever loved in my life. Even John F. Kennedy saw him as an alter ego. Dark, handsome, and well over 6 feet tall, with thick, wavy hair and an attractively cleft chin. He was a romantic comedian, suave and well-dressed, ironic, jaunty, and a touch caustic, but very, very funny. The image was carefully cultivated, and behind it was a complex and troubled man, today's history maker, Cary Grant, the greatest performance Archibald Leach ever gave. He was born in 1904 to a working class family in Bristol. Archie Leach, as he was known then, was the only surviving child of Elias, a tailor's presser, and his wife, Elsie. The Leach household was not a happy one, and when Archie Leach was 9, his mother was suddenly committed to a mental institution. Nobody told the boy what had happened to her, and in time he came to believe that she was dead. The sense of abandonment deeply affected his character and left him with a lack of trust which was to ruin all but one of his many marriages and love affairs. He was a lonely child, hanging around backstage doing odd jobs at the local music halls. Stage struck, he was expelled from school aged 14, after which he found escape by joining Bob Pender's local vaudeville troupe. He had been dazzled by the Victorian glamour of the Bristol Hippodrome, and going onto the stage as a career offered an escape from the joblessness of home. Working in a music hall troupe as an acrobat and all-round entertainer gave him the physical dexterity which he exploited in his later comedy films. Some 2 years after joining with Bob Pender, at 16, he travelled to America for a long run at the huge New York Hippodrome, followed by a tour of large American cities. He stayed on in the US during the Roaring Twenties as a vaudeville performer and theatre actor. Before too long, he had graduated to acting in the theatre, working hard to eliminate any trace of his West Country accent. But shifting to Hollywood, by December 1931, Archie Leach signed a contract with the film studio Paramount under the name Cary Grant. From 1932 to 1936, Paramount used Grant in over 20 films, as well as lending him to other companies. He played opposite many well-known stars, but the films, although good experience, were stereotyped and undistinguished. To Grant's frustration, Paramount made no attempt to promote him as they promoted their big star, Gary Cooper. However, his appearance in a star vehicle with Marlene Dietrich and 2 more with Mae West drew attention to him. As his reputation grew, Grant decided to leave Paramount and in future negotiate his own contracts, insisting on a share of the box office in addition to a guaranteed fee. Subsequently worked with some of the best directors in Hollywood. Bringing Up Baby and Holiday were crazy comedies, and Gunga Din an enormous success, one as an uproarious version of a Rudyard Kipling story. His screen image and comic timing were now so polished that success at the box office for any of his films was assured, and his departure from Paramount was triumphantly justified. During the war, one film which was outstanding as both a critical and a commercial success was The Philadelphia Story for MGM. Directed by George Cukor and co-starring Katharine Hepburn, James Stewart received an Oscar for his part in this film. Grant, on the other hand, had such a relaxed comedy style that he hardly seemed to be acting at all and was taken for granted by the Academy. The black comedy Arsenic and Lace of 1942 was another tremendous commercial hit. Suspicion in 1941 was the first of 4 important collaborations with the English director Alfred Hitchcock. Characteristically, the latter saw more in Grant than the urbane charmer. He detected a hidden side, guarded, and even with a hint of menace, and cast him as a man plotting to murder his wife. Both Grant and the studio demurred, and the ending was changed, but a teasing ambiguity remained, and the film has probably had a greater appeal to later, more sophisticated generations than it had at the time. One of the best films of his career was 1946's Notorious. Again, Hitchcock cast him as a not entirely straightforward character, a cool intelligence agent using the woman he loved to entice another man. The film, with Ingrid Bergman, had the usual Hitchcock suspense and was much admired. While he talked of retiring after this film, before long, however, he was again lured back by Hitchcock, and in 1954 filmed one of his most popular and glamorous films, the comedy thriller To Catch a Thief with Grace Kelly. Once again, it was Hitchcock who had rescued Grant from some despair, and such was the case with the last of their 4 films together, the very famous North by Northwest. This is celebrated as one of Hitchcock's very finest films. It has drama, action, and tension, as one would expect from the master of suspense. It even has humour, screenwriter Ernest Lehman having set out to create the ultimate comedy thriller. And it has something else: Cary Grant's suit. The medium grey Glen check number he wears in North by Northwest has taken on a legend all of its own. It is one of the hardest working suits on celluloid. It survives a stabbed man falling into it, a crop dusting biplane charging at it, and a tumultuous chase across America, all the while keeping Grant in his usual impeccable style. In 1934, Grant had married a young actress, Virginia Adler. This marriage rapidly fell apart and they divorced a year later, and Grant returned to the apartment he had previously shared with fellow Paramount actor Randolph Scott. This convenient bachelor arrangement was not uncommon at the time, but led to talk of bisexuality. Whatever the truth, Grant's desire for a happy marriage was to prove one of the driving forces of his life. He became an American citizen in June 1942. On July the 8th, 1942, Grant married a second time. His wife, Barbara Hutton, was heiress to the Woolworth fortune, and the extravagant and gregarious lifestyle of a wealthy socialite was so much at variance with Grant's lack of security that despite a real affection which lasted until her death in 1979, the marriage itself could not survive and ended in 1945. In December 1949, Grant married for the third time. This time the wife was Betsy Drake, another young actress. Unfortunately, while making a film in Spain in 1957, co-starring Sophia Loren, he fell madly in love with her, thus wrecking his marriage to Betsy. In 1965, with Sophia Loren out the picture, Grant married another young actress, Diane Cannon, who was considerably younger than him. But despite the welcome birth of his only child, the marriage was no more successful than the others and ended in divorce in 1968. He would, however, find a sense of purpose in bringing up his daughter, Jennifer, and he finally achieved marriage happiness in the shape of Barbara Harris, with whom he was in a relationship with for the last decade of his life. At 62, Grant was still a vigorous and handsome man and had no intention of becoming a silver-haired character actor. Without formally announcing his retirement, he simply turned his attention to other things, and he now pursued an active business career. In 1970, the Academy gave him the Survivor's Consolation Prize and an honorary Oscar award. Tall, dark and handsome, with a rare gift for light comedy, he played a leading man who liked to be led, a man of the world who was a man of the people. Cary Grant was Hollywood's quintessential democratic gentleman. Born in England as Archie Leach, made famous in America as Cary Grant, he was a star for more than 30 years in more than 70 movies. His popularity still intact when he brought his career to a close at 62, so he could spend time with his daughter. He described her as my best production. He was never replaced. Nobody else talked like that, looked like that, or behaved like that. One film critic even declaring Cary Grant to be the best and most important actor in the history of cinema, and truly a history maker.